Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I just wanted to break down a recent client campaign that I edited for Lululemon. This campaign was a pretty big brand film. I think it highlighted their fall-winter season collection. My job was to edit the brand campaign, but we also did a bunch of other deliverables, including social media cutdowns. We did billboard assets. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at the final edit for this project.
우리가 함께한다면 어떤 기적을 이룰 수 있을까요?
If you have a friend when you are at your lowest, you can overcome anything.
함께하면 더 큰 성장을 이룰 수 있어요.
Moving in sync with one another.
함께 도와주고 끌어주면 우린 어디까지 갈 수 있을까요?
Together we grow.
So I just want to make this video breaking down that video, sort of the timeline, and also my creative editing process when I go about working on these client campaigns. All right, so this is the full timeline of this project. And as you can tell, I am not the most organized editor in the world. This just goes to show that there's a bunch of different ways you can go about doing client work. There's not like a single set specific way that I recommend. However, I do have a few key things that I do before every project that might make more sense, might make your life a little bit easier. So actually a thing that I do that's a little bit different than perhaps most people is I like to do what's called a radio edit at the very beginning. A radio edit is basically going ahead and creating an edit just based purely off of the audio component. I actually got a voiceover track and script for this project. So the first thing I did was I went ahead and just laid out the voiceover kind of flow that was going to go for this 30-second video. So
우리가 함께한다면 어떤 기적을 이룰 수 있을까요?
If you have a friend when you are at your lowest, you can overcome anything.
So I have that all on the first track, and it's just easy to like go ahead and line out the timing of everything, give a little bit of space between each of the clips. And once I have the voiceover set up here, I'll actually go ahead and add a couple different effects to each voiceover. I found that these particular effects actually help enhance the sounding of the voice. These are the effects I use for all of my voiceovers. They might not work for specific timbres of voice, but I've added a vocal enhancer, a de-reverb, graphic equalizer, parametric equalizer, and hard limiter. These are all on the default settings, I believe. You can go ahead and tweak this. Yeah, these are all on the default settings. If I were to delete all of these effects that I added onto Park Seo-joon's voice, this is what it sounds without it.
우리가 함께한다면
Doesn't sound great. A lot of times you'll get audio that you have no idea how people have mixed it, how people have captured it. And so these are just a couple things that I like to add. Again, this is
우리가 함께한다면
before and after.
우리가 함께한다면
It just kind of gets rid of the peaking and sort of gives a stronger bass, which I like the sounding of like bassier voices. And I've gone ahead and added that to most people. I think I've lowered Leah's a little bit.
Friend when you are at your lowest.
Because it just started peaking, and you just want to like fine tune it. But basically you want to give attention to your voiceovers because that's probably the most driving factor for, in particular, this video, but a lot of videos that have narrative pieces. The voice needs to sound nice, full, refreshing, all that. After I've gone ahead and laid out my voiceover, I then go ahead and add my music track. And my music track, this takes forever. I wish there was an easier way, but you just got to go ahead and figure out what music flows, not only with kind of the visuals, but also kind of like flows with people's voices. And a lot of times I like audios that have cool ebbs and flows. Let's just play it without any sound effects.
우리가 함께한다면 어떤 기적을 이룰 수 있을까요?
If you have a friend when you are at your lowest, you can overcome anything.
Let me just mute the voiceover real quick. If you play it again, just again from the beginning, it has a really nice ambient. I think I don't know what the instrument is. The little high pitched stuff, the little high pitched synths or whatever. I'm not an audio expert. This is just a great example of an audio where it has a cool introduction with like these organs, and then it goes into more of like a mellow. It's not really beat driven. It's just kind of like an ambient noise. And I thought it'd be perfect for this idea of growing together. So it'll really allow for the visuals to shine, but also it'd give me a lot of room to do a lot of sound design because the clips that I actually received from the production agency didn't have any diegetic sound. So all the sound, I mean, you can kind of just tell, but like I had to basically recreate everything and fake it in post. And so I'll go kind of scene by scene and break down the sound design thought process. But just in terms of the music, you can tell I've got the music, the voiceover, and the first step is without any visuals, I just lay out, and again, it's called the radio edit. I just lay out the voiceover and kind of time it generally with the music. If you'll notice, I actually have 3 separate tracks for my music. This is all the same track. A lot of times I like to go ahead and chop different sections of my music. When I say music, this particular song, I really like the intro. I cut from the intro to a mid part of the song because I just like the flow of it better. And in between the cuts, I like to add a constant power, constant gain. And then again, for the ending, I really like that last high pitch instrument. So I wanted to end on that. So I just chopped it up at a place and put a constant gain. And that basically flows everything together at an average gain or average like decibel level. So it doesn't feel like there was a hard cut in the audio. So that's step 1 and 2, basically getting your voiceover set up and then getting your music set up. Once I have the base of the audio set up, that's next where I go ahead and figure out the flow of the visuals. The way that I go about and do this is what I do is I go ahead and get all of the clips together. I mean, you can kind of see some of the hard clips here, and I'll just scrub through all of the clips and figure out what selects I'd like to use for my project. So let's say, for instance, if I like this clip where she looks at the camera, I'll just figure out what I like and I'll move it to the top. And then at the end, I'll select all of my clips and make like a compiled selects part of my sequence, where then I'll use that and I'll just drag and drop accordingly to whatever section of the film that I want to use those clips in. Once I've got all my selects, then it's where the fun happens, where I can kind of figure out how I'm going to go about editing this entire project. So let me just go in chronological order and just talk about the thought process behind everything. So in the beginning, we have a water wheel drain water. I've also got this binaural nature strong forest wind. These are just to create some sort of like ambient noise in the background. And then up until this first transition, I have a deep long whoosh, and I think this is another whoosh. A recurring theme you'll find throughout this entire timeline is I like to layer sounds. And so I have a couple ambient noises here. These are to help build the atmospheric environmental feeling. And then I've got 2 whooshes right up until this first transition. So this initial scene was probably the strongest scene we have of our main hero character without revealing his face. I wanted a shot not showing the main character's face, kind of to build a little bit of tension, but also to introduce the environment. The first scene, crucially, is obviously the first thing that people see, but also it's where you can kind of introduce the setting. And so a lot of times I like to use wide shots. And in this particular scene, this was just a beautiful dolly scene they had of this tidal pool along with our main hero here looking out into nature. And so I really love this scene, so I just use this in the intro and I let it play out a bit longer than I typically play my short form clips. I've let it run about 2
우리가
seconds.
함께한다면 어떤 기적을
So moving along into this first sequence here, we have, if you'll notice, we have like this slow shutter wipe that goes across 4 seconds into various cut scenes of nature. And I've got these all maybe at like, I don't know, 10 frames or something like that, nothing crazy. This actually, funny enough, this isn't even from this project. This is just something I had in my archives. It's a slow shutter, just like of trees. I didn't have, typically if I shoot a project, I like to get slow shutter shots on set, but this project didn't have any slow shutter shots that were taken during the project. So I just pulled this from another project. I do this all the time. There's no rules. You don't have to use specific scenes only from that project. You just find whatever works. So in terms of sound design, again, I've got a couple whooshes that go into this serene nature forest wind ambient sound. Totally fake. It's just like the wind rustling in the leaves. And then we've got 4 different scenes here. And to really help increase that buildup, I've added some clicks. These are fake Kodak shutter sounds.
어떤 기적을
And I've also got this deep bass drop going into that first scene. If you just delete all of this,
어떤 기적
it's not terrible, but it definitely adds a little bit of kind of like audio interest to this build-up.
어떤 기적을 이룰 수 있을까요?
So the next scene here, to give you an idea of how you want to structure your videos, you really want to keep the general theme in mind at all times. And so this project was all about togetherness and together we grow. So I wanted to first introduce the main hero character, which in this case was Park Seo-joon. I wanted to showcase him at first and then build into the rest of the characters. So we have that first kind of like back environment shot. You don't know who this is. We go into nature. And then we go into a side profile
이룰 수 있을까요?
and he's sort of like waking up and it's a really tight shot of his face.
If you have a friend when
This next sequence here is where I first introduce the other characters in this campaign. And this first transition here where we come kind of like out of this dream state into the other characters, this is just an adjustment layer of exposure increase. So we're going from 0 up until 3 stops of exposure. You can keyframe this actually in Premiere Pro using the Lumetri color. Basic corrections, you just add this to a keyframe and increase exposure. This is a very lazy, but a very effective trick that I use all the time. I use this either with kind of like, in this case, I've got a quick reverb whoosh and a metallic riser. And you can tell it's like a, and that kind of helps build that transition. Nothing crazy. And it's a really easy trick to kind of just throw in a little transition. And then we have 4 key portrait shots of these 4 in motion. I wanted to start with our hero PSJ here opening his eyes and then the 4 already in movement. So I made the conscious decision to showcase them doing kind of like the same crop, kind of like a mid shot, profile shot, but they're all in movement. Moving along, Leah's voiceover says, if you have a friend. So at that point, I thought it was a good time to introduce not just solo shots, but this idea of togetherness. I wanted to showcase double shots, slowly build into those stronger group scenes that we have later in the film. I decided to include a couple different slow motion movement shots. Accompanying this, I don't have anything crazy. I just have a diegetic women's breath sound. And then I also have a whooshed reverb. So nothing too crazy.
Your lowest, you can overcome.
So I have this all at slow motion, and then all of a sudden we have this series of movement. And this is where I kind of wanted to change the tempo a little bit. So I included 2 different risers and a smooth cinematic whoosh right as she turns her back towards PSJ. And if you listen to this without these sounds actually,
You can overcome anything. You can overcome.
It's not bad, but it's not as kind of like interesting. So I've just added this whoosh to kind of help build that that suspense. This next transition here is probably my favorite transition because it's kind of like jarring, and it also adds a lot of interest to this otherwise really uninteresting transition where we have his feet land on this wooden box. And let me just play it real quick. So something you might not have noticed right off the bat, and these are little tricks of continuity as an editor, things that you can throw into your timeline that really help the audience digest information. This clip is a shot of him jumping on a box, but his legs are bent. The next clip, I actually also wanted somebody's legs bent to keep that sort of same theme of just like visual continuity. And so I actually purposely wanted to place these together. To add a little emphasis to this transition, I've actually added a deep impact, which without it, and then with it, that strong, like deep thud really helps sell that transition. And that's just a little trick where just a little bit of audio can really elevate your just like normal cuts, your hard cuts. Not everything has to be super, detailed VFX heavy. It can just be a simple audio transition that really elevates your visuals. I've got a couple other sounds that I added in here. This one's birds in the forest. This one is quiet ambience, field leaves rustling. Just stuff to help build your environment. These aren't even like specifically connected to this clip in general, but it helps build that feeling of being in nature. And then this next transition is actually a speed ramp. Along with the flash that I spoke about earlier, speed ramps are an easy way to help build a cool transition. Basically what I have is I've got a speed ramp here from 100% up until 730%. I've just spread this over 4 or 5 frames. I've added an adjustment layer with RSMB, which is a motion blur plugin, and it just, as they kind of like speed up into that next movement scene, I've also coupled that with, again, another whoosh. What is this? This is another whoosh again, a simple riser. I've got, again, 2 or 3 whooshes and a riser. That's kind of like the secret sauce here. It's just coupling, doubling down on different sound effects, figuring out what works. I like to layer things and then see, sometimes it's too much, you'll take things away, but usually 2 or 3 layers of sounds for each transition. Seems like a good sweet spot. Another key here that I just wanted to point out real quickly is that as we move, they start to pick up speed and move to the left. So the next scene, I wanted them to, again, be moving to the left. You want to make sure that your action is easily digestible, easily can be followed. And as a viewer, you don't want to think too much. You just want to like digest it as naturally and in full flow as possible. So these little things of coupling this particular scene of them moving to the left, and then again, they're moving to the left. It's just little things as an editor you can do to make your video seem a little bit smoother. Between this, I have another whoosh. Sometimes it just adds a little bit.
함께하면
And then as she's running, you'll notice that there's some sound footsteps. These aren't real, these are all fake. Again, I think this is from Artlist, where I've added that along with another forest wind ambience sound to really build that environmental feeling.
함께하면 더 큰 성장을 이룰 수 있어요.
To recap, we've gone from solo shots to double shots, more double shots, and then this is the first time that you see the entire crew together. So from this point on, we've introduced solo shots, double shots, and now I want to really hone in on that feeling of togetherness. So all these shots, I really want to focus on getting as many people as I can in the frame to kind of build that group feeling. So I've got a full shot. As she moves her arm here, that's when I cut to this next scene. She's moving her arm from left to right. And so the next scene, I wanted, again, her to be moving from left to right. Another just small detail that I think helps with the flow of the video. I've added another whoosh here, a layered whoosh. I think that's it actually for this one.
더 큰 성장을 이룰 수 있어요.
Moving in sync with one another.
This next scene here, I just have Park Seo-joon, again, a hero shot, and then he's gonna be starting to do a little jump rope, a little action. And so I have a riser along with a whoosh, recurring theme. And then I have this fake boxing gym jump rope sound. If I were to delete that, it's not terrible. It just seems like a really boring commercial. So adding that kind of makes it feel a little bit more realistic.
Moving in sync.
Another very conscious decision that I made was the next kind of like voiceover is Leia saying moving in sync with one another. Up until now, we only had basically like slow motion shots. Now that we're moving, once we have the main character really doing his jump roping, that's where I wanted to bring the footage back to 100% and not have this slow motion feeling, but this real life motion feeling. So I have it all at 100% here. So you'll notice that.
Moving in sync with one.
And I have, again, some whooshes. This sound is a gym rope trainer pulling some sort of sound. It's not even actually from this.
With one another.
It's like a droning sound. It has nothing to do with this, but it just makes it kind of like help with the build up. And I think it adds a little bit of interest to this sequence.
In sync with one another.
This next sequence here, we go from a wide shot, he's over here on the left, and then we cut to this tight shot. And then in between this, we have, again, another example of something that's completely unrelated, but I've used it a lot. It's a slow shutter shot just for 2 seconds, and we have this wipe sound. This is not related to anything. I've added a riser and another whoosh, and it's just another cheat code. If you don't have transitions for everything, or you're just trying to add a little bit. A lot of editors do this. They'll add like a slow shutter and just a whoosh and a riser. And it's a cheap way, but it's a really effective way to add a little kind of like excitement to your video. This next cut here is a match cut between Leah by herself and then she has with a partner. So she's doing the same movement where she's raising her arms, and we cut to basically roughly the same position, but she's now raising her arms with somebody else in a new location. Not even the cleanest match cut, to be honest. I probably could have done a way better job than this. Timeline, you know, deadlines, sometimes you can't do everything. And I've just coupled this on with some shutter sounds to build that match cut. Without it, see? And with it. Just adds a little bit.
함께 도와주고.
This next sequence here is an example of a cut I do a lot, and it's when your character, and not just this particular film, but like when somebody turns their head, that's a great time to like cut a scene, just because there's a little bit of suspense building, and it's just like, it just feels like a good place to cut. So I have this actually where he looks, the next scene, she's also looking back towards everybody else running. So this is just another example of as he looks, she's also looking. And that's another visual continuity thing. I don't even think I have. Do I have? I do have a whoosh. I have a whoosh right there.
우린 어디까지 갈 수...
This next sequence is just pure laziness on my end. I just needed a couple more transitions. So I did, again, the same thing. I added some fake wipes from completely unrelated projects. And I've added some whoosh and wipe sound effects. I'm not super proud about this particular section. Sometimes you just gotta do with what you have. So
주면 우린
wipe,
어디까지
wipe.
갈 수... 우린 어디까지 갈 수 있을까요?
So up until now, just to recap, once again, solo, introducing characters. We've got togetherness doubled. Then we start to have group shots. Then we go from solo, double, group shots. Solo, double, group shots. Solo, double, group shots. There's just different combinations of just building different layers of story where subconsciously maybe you don't notice these things, but as an editor, it's your job to build themes visually, audially, the whole concept. You just gotta keep this in mind, is the whole concept of your film, from the art direction and the client particularly wanted to hone in on this togetherness. So for me, it's always important to keep that in mind as you're building out your scene selects. It's not always about picking the most visually beautiful shots. It's about figuring out how to weave those visually beautiful shots into a narrative, into a flow that makes sense for your thematic choice, that makes sense to really highlight what the brand is trying to sell or the brand theme messaging they're trying to bring home. Those are the key important things. It's not just about figuring out ways to make cool transitions in kind of like client brand film campaign work. You're really wanting to make cool transitions, but you want to make it make sense.
어디까지 갈 수 있을까요?
Together we grow.
And then finally, for this ending, you'll notice for a lot of these cuts, right at the peak of the movement. So as he's opening up his body, right at like the climactic point, I'm cutting. Right as he reaches over, fully extended, I'm cutting. And then for this one, I did another cheeky speed ramp into this final flash cut, where in the beginning, I don't know if you remember, but I did a nature flash cut. I'm doing the same transition at the beginning as at the end to kind of tie everything together. So you've got that flash transition in the beginning, then you have this flash transition at the end, but you're reminding everybody who the main characters are in this film. Again, solo shots. And then we're ending on another strong kind of key visual togetherness shot. And to couple this, I've added another speed ramp here. This is to 800% over 4 frames. So he's like cranking this thing, and that's really starting kind of the movement series. I've also added a dramatic whoosh and what is this, Super 8 camera clasp? I don't even know what this is. Let me just delete this and we'll listen to it without that.
Together.
And then with it.
Together.
It adds
Together.
It adds a little bit to it. I think it really kind of ties it home.
Together we grow.
And at the end here, I've got right at the end. So right as he's full intensity about to hit this rope on the ground, I've got some risers, I got a whoosh, and then I've got this, what is this? An impact right as he hits the ground to introduce his final scene. This is an example of using audio to create your transition on cut.
Together.
With it.
Together.
And without it.
Together. Together.
It really adds a layer of environmental feeling and just sense of dramatic sounds that really help elevate your film. This is an easy way to help elevate a client project, your personal project. Audio is so important. And we've just ended on this. Nothing crazy in this scene. We just have them chilling out. They've just finished a workout and we're just doing like a together shot. And we have this overlay right here.
We grow.
And that's it. The final step, of course, is color grading. My good friend Peace Gates, shout out Peace, go check out his YouTube channel. He did the color grading for this entire project, and we just wanted kind of like a warm feeling. So we had a lot of oranges, a lot of greens, kind of like washed out colors. That was a preference by the client, and I think it came out really cool. So some final thoughts and key takeaways of this particular client project and client projects in general. I think the key thing, the main thing to always keep in mind is, how is the film or photo or whatever you're creating for your client, how is that helping bring home the messaging or the cause of the campaign? How are you telling their story? It's great to really flex your creative muscles and find ways to like showcase really beautiful shots. But at the end of the day, you're trying to tell a story, and your job as, in particular this case, as an editor, you're finding ways, utilizing your tricks, your bag of editing skills to tell that story. I had to figure out how to integrate the best hero shots with doubles, triples, and group shots to really bring home that feeling and that key messaging of together we grow. Sometimes when you get home, you start your edit, you realize that you haven't captured enough visuals or you didn't get those key shots you had in mind. That's where sound design can really help you elevate your project, actually build transitions just through your audio experience. And you can kind of save yourself a lot of times by using, like speed ramps, flash cuts, different things, different tricks to help elevate the project and make the video feel a little bit more interesting. Client work is always super challenging, but it's a a lot of fun and it's really fulfilling when you see the final piece out in the world. And what better way to attract more clients than to showcase all of your best client work in a very curated, beautiful portfolio through your own personal website. That's where today's sponsor, Durable, comes in super clutch. Durable is a fantastic website builder and business platform, perfect for creatives and entrepreneurs. When you want to set up an online portfolio website, the AI website builder is just a super easy way to get started. You can build a fully functional website in just 30 seconds. With just a few clicks, you can get a super solid foundation from which you can adjust which photos, which videos, which projects you want to highlight to attract the types of clients you want to work with. The key here is that you don't need any coding knowledge. The AI website builder takes care of everything for you, and you can actually generate your website for free before you decide which plan you want to continue with. There's various plans that'll help you with domain and website hosting, and overall it's just a super easy process. Durable also has other tools for small businesses, and it's an amazing platform to get your business started. If you want to try out Durable, click the link in the description or use my code GAKU30 for 30% off 3 months of subscription. Thank you, Durable, for sponsoring this video. So yeah, if you have any questions on this particular project, maybe I didn't go into detail enough on a certain section, or if you have questions just on client work in general or anything else, feel free to leave in the comments below. I'll try to get back to you. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.